Book 5, Part 2 of the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nicole Lee. The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia by Philip Sidney, Book 5, Part 2. While this matter was thus handling, a silent and, as it were, astonished attention possessed all the people. A kindly compassion moved the noble gentleman's sympathers, but as for Calendar, everything was spoken either by or for his own dear guests, moved an effect in him. Sometimes tears, sometimes hopeful looks, sometimes whispering persuasions in their ears that stood by him to seek the saving the two young princes. But the general multitude waited the judgment of Euarchus, who showed in his face no motions, either at the one's or other speech, letting pass the flowers of rhetoric, and only marking whither their reasons tended, having made the question to be asked of Gynecia, who continued to take the whole fault upon herself, and having called Demetus, with Meso and Mopsa, who by Philanax's order had been held in most cruel prison, to make a full declaration how much they knew of these past matters, and then gathering as assured satisfaction to his own mind, as in that case he could, not needing to take leisure, for that whereof a long practice had bred a well-grounded habit in him, with a voice and gesture directed to the universal assembly, he pronounced sentence. I do, in the behalf of justice and by the force of Arcadian laws, pronounce that Daiphantus shall be thrown out of a high tower to receive his death by his fall. Palladius shall be beheaded. The time before the sunset, the place in Mantinea, the executioner Demetus, which office he shall execute all the days of his life, for his beastly forgetting the careful duty he owed to his charge. This said, he turned himself to Philanax and two of the other noblemen, commanding them to see the judgment presently performed. Philanax, more greedy than any hunter of his prey, went straight to lay hold of the excellent prisoners, who, casting a farewell look one upon the other, represented in their faces as much unappalled constancy as the most excellent courage can deliver in outward graces. Yet, if at all there were any show of change in them, it was that Pyrocles was somewhat nearer to a bashfulness, and Musidorus to anger, both overruled by reason and resolution. But as, with great number of armed men, Philanax was descending unto them, and that Musidorus was beginning to say something in Pyrocles' behalf, behold Calendar, that with arms cast abroad and open mouth came crying to Euarchus, holding a stranger in his hand that cried much more than he, desiring they might be heard speak before the prisoners were removed. Even the noble gentleman's sympathers aided them in it, and taking such as he could command, stopped Philanax, betwixt entreaty and force, from carrying away the princes, until it were heard what new matters these men did bring. So again, mounting to the tribunal, they hearkened to the stranger's vehement speech, or rather a passionate exclaiming. It was indeed Calogulus, the faithful friend of Musidorus, to whom his master, when, in despite of his best grounded determinations, he first became a slave to affection, had sent the shepherd Menalcas to be arrested, by the help of whose raiment in the meantime he advanced himself to that estate which he accounted most high, because it might be serviceable to that fancy which he had placed most high in his mind. For Menalcas, having faithfully performed his errand, was as faithfully imprisoned by Calogulus. But as Calogulus performed the first part of his duty in doing the commandment of the prince, so was he with abundance of sincere loyalty extremely perplexed when he understood of Menalcas the strange disguising of his beloved master. For, as the acts he and his cousin Pyrocles had done in Asia had filled all the ears of the Thessalians and Macedonians with no less joy than admiration, so was the fear of their loss no less grievous unto them, when by the noise of report they understood of their lonely committing themselves to the sea, the issue of which they had no way learned. But now that by Menalcas he perceived where he was, guessing the like of Pyrocles, comparing the unusedness of this act with the unripeness of their age, seeing in general conjecture they could do it for nothing that might not fall out dangerous, he was somewhat troubled with himself what to do, betwixt doubt of their hurt and doubt of their displeasure. Often he was minded, as his safest and honestest way, to reveal it to the king Euarchus, that both his authority might prevent any damage to them, and under his wings he himself might remain safe. But considering a journey to Byzantium, where as yet he supposed Euarchus lay, would require more time than he was willing to remain doubtful of his prince's estate, he resolved at length to write the matter to Euarchus, and himself the while to go into Arcadia, uncertain what to do when he came thither, but determined to do his best service to his dear master, if by any good fortune he might find him. And so it happened that, being even this day come to Mantinea, and as warily and attentively as he could, giving ear to all reports, in hope to hear something of them he sought, he straight received a strange rumour of these things, but so uncertainly as popular reports carry so rare accidents. But this by all men he was willed, to seek out Calendar, a great gentleman of that country, who would sooner satisfy him of all occurrence, Thus instructed he came, even about the midst of Euarchus' judgment, to the desert, where, seeing great multitudes, and hearing unknown names of Palladius and Daiphantus, and not able to press to the place where Euarchus sate, he inquired for Kalander, and was soon brought unto him, partly because he was generally known unto all men, and partly because he had withdrawn himself from the press, when he perceived by Euarchus' words whither they tended, being not able to endure his guest's condemnation. He requireth forthwith of Kalander the cause of the assembly, and whether the same were true of Euarchus' presence, who with many tears made a doubtful recital unto him, both of the Amazon and shepherd, setting forth their natural graces, and lamenting their pitiful undoing. But this description made Kalodulus immediately know the shepherd was his duke, and so judging the other to be Pyrocles, and speedily communicating it to Kalander, who he saw did favour their case, they brake the press with astonishing every man with their cries. And being come to Euarchus, Kalodulus fell at his feet, telling him those he had judged were his own son and nephew, the one the comfort of Macedon, the other the only stay of Thessalia, with many such like words, but as from a man that assured himself in that matter he should need small speech. While Kalander made it known to all men what the prisoners were, to whom he cried they should salute their father, and joy in the good hap the gods had sent them, who were no less glad than all the people, amazed at the strange event of these matters. Even Philanax's own revengeful heart was mollified, when he saw from divers parts of the world so near kinsmen should meet in such a necessity. And withal the fame of Pyrocles and Musidorus greatly drew him to a compassionate conceit, and had already unclothed his face of all show of malice. But Euarchus stayed a good while upon himself, like a valiant man that should receive a notable encounter, being vehemently stricken with the fatherly love of so excellent children, and studying with his best reason what his office required. At length, with such a kind of gravity as was near to sorrow, he thus uttered his mind. I take witness of the immortal gods, said he, O Arcadians, that what this day I have said hath been out of my assured persuasion, what justice itself and your just laws require. Though strangers then to me, I had no desire to hurt them, but leaving aside all considerations of the persons, I weighed the matter which you committed into my hands with my most unpartial and furthest reach of reason, and thereout have condemned them to lose their lives, contaminated with so many foul breaches of hospitality, civility, and virtue. Now, contrary to all expectations, I find them to be my only son and nephew, such upon whom you see what gifts nature hath bestowed, such who have so to the wonder of the world heretofore behaved themselves as might give just cause to the greatest hopes that in an excellent youth may be conceived. Lastly, in few words, such in whom I placed all my mortal joys, and thought myself, now near my grave, to recover a new life. But alas, shall justice halt, or shall she wink in one's cause that had lynx's eyes in another's? Or rather shall all private respects give place to that holy name? Be it so, be it so. Let my grey hairs be laid in the dust with sorrow. Let the small remnant of my life be to me an inward and outward desolation, and to the world a gazing stock of wretched misery. But never, never let sacred rightfulness fall. It is immortal, and immortality ought to be preserved. If rightly I have judged, then rightly I have judged mine own children, unless the name of a child should have force to change the never-changing justice. No, no, Pyrocles and Musidorus, I prefer you much before my life, but I prefer justice as far before you. While you did like yourselves, my body should willingly have been your shield, but I cannot keep you from the effects of your own doing. Nay, I cannot in this case acknowledge you for mine, for never had I shepherd to my nephew, nor ever had woman to my son. Your vices have degraded you from being princes, and have disannulled your birthright. Therefore, if there be anything left in you of princely virtue, show it in constant suffering, that your unprincely dealing hath purchased unto you. For my part, I must tell you, you have forced a father to rob himself of his children. Do you therefore, O Philanax, and you, my other lords of this country, see the judgment be rightly performed, in time, place, and manner, as before appointed. With that, though he would have refrained them, a man might perceive the tears drop down his long white beard, which moved not only Kalodulus and Kalander to roaring lamentations, but all the assembly dolefully to record that pitiful spectacle. Philanax himself could not abstain from great shows of pitying sorrow, and manifest withdrawing from performing the king's commandment. But as this pitiful matter was entering into, those that were next the duke's body might hear from under the velvet wherewith he was covered a great voice of groaning, whereat every man astonished, and their spirits appalled with these former miseries, apt to take any strange conceit, when they might perfectly perceive the body stir. Then some began to fear spirits, some to look for a miracle, most to imagine they knew not what. But Philanax and Kalander, whose eyes honest love, though to divers parties, held most attentive, leapt to the table, and putting off the velvet cover, might discern, with as much wonder as gladness, that the duke lived, For so it was that the drink he received was neither, as Gynecia first imagined, a love potion, nor, as it was after thought, a deadly poison, but a drink made by notable art, and, as it was thought, not without natural magic, to procure for 30 hours such a deadly sleep as should oppress all show of life. The cause of the making of this drink had first been, that a princess of Cyprus, grandmother to Gynecia, being notably learned, and yet not able with all her learning to answer the objections of Cupid, did furiously love a young nobleman of her father's court, who, fearing the king's rage, and not once daring either to attempt or accept so high a place, she made that sleeping drink, and found means by a trusty servant of hers, who of purpose invited him to his chamber, to procure him, that suspected no such thing, to receive it. Which done, he, no way able to resist, was secretly carried by him into a pleasant chamber, in the midst of a garden she had of purpose provided for this enterprise, where that space of time pleased herself with seeing and cherishing of him, when the time came of the drink's end of working, and he more astonished than if he had fallen from the clouds. She bade him choose either then to marry her, and to promise to fly away with her in a bark she had made ready, or else she would presently cry out, and show him what place he was, with oath he was come thither to ravish her. The nobleman in these straits, her beauty prevailed. He married her, and escaped the realm with her, and after many strange adventures were reconciled to the king her father, after whose death they reigned. But she, gratefully remembering the service that drink had done her, preserved in a bottle, made by singular art long to keep it without perishing, great quantity of it, with the foretold inscription, which, wrongly interpreted by her daughter-in-law the Queen of Cyprus, was given by her to Gynecia at the time of her marriage, and the drink, finding an old body of Basilius, had kept him some hours longer in the trance than it would have done a younger. But a while it was before good Basilius could come again to himself, in which time Euarchus, more glad than of the whole world's monarchy, to be rid of his miserable magistracy, which even in justice he was now to surrender to the lawful prince of that country, came from the throne unto him, and there with much ado made him understand how these intricate matters had fallen out. Many garboils passed through his fancy, before he could be persuaded Zelmane was other than a woman. At length, remembering the oracle, which now indeed was accomplished, not as before he had imagined, considering all had fallen out by the highest providence, and withal weighing in all these matters his own fault had been the greatest, the first thing he did was with all honourable pomp to send for Gynecia, who, poor lady, thought she was leading forth to her living burial, and when she came to recount before all the people the excellent virtue was in her, which she had not only maintained all her life most unspotted, but now was content so miserably to die, to follow her husband. He told them how she had warned him to take heed of that drink, and so with all the exaltings of her that might be, publicly desired her pardon for those errors he had committed, and so kissing her, left her to receive the most honourable fame of any princess throughout the world, all men thinking, saving only Pyrocles and Philoclea, who never betrayed her, that she was the perfect mirror of all wifely love, which though in that point undeserved, she did in the remnant of her life duly purchase, with observing all duty and faith to the example and glory of Greece. So uncertain are mortal judgments, the same person most infamous and most famous, and neither justly. Then with princely entertainment to Euarchus, and many kind words to Pyrocles, whom still he dearly loved, though in a more virtuous kind, the marriage was concluded, to the inestimable joy of Euarchus, betwixt the peerless princes and princesses. Philanax, for his singular faith, ever held dear of Basilius while he lived, and no less of Musidorus, who was to inherit that kingdom, and therein confirmed to him and his the second place of that province, with great increase of his living to maintain it, which like proportion he used to Calogulus in Thessalia, highly honouring Calander, while he lived, and after his death continuing in the same measure to love and advance his son Cleitophon. But as for Sympathus, Pyrocles, to whom his father in his own time gave the whole kingdom of Thrace, held him always about him, giving him in pure gift the great city of Abdera. But the solemnities of these marriages with the Arcadian pastorals, full of many comical adventures happening to those rural lovers, the strange stories of Artaxia and Plexirtus, Erona and Plangus, Helen and Amphialus, with the wonderful chances that befell them, the shepherdish loves of Menalcas with Calogulus' daughter, the poor hopes of the poor Philicides in the pursuit of his affections, the strange continuance of Cleius and Strephon's desire, lastly the son of Pyrocles named Pyrophilus, and Melidora, the fair daughter of Pamela by Musidorus, who even at their birth entered into admirable fortunes, may awake some other spirit to exercise his pen in that wherewith mine is already dulled. End of Book 5. End of the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia by Philip Sidney.